The Economic Forum has begun in Cape Town. Ayabonga Cawe takes us through the purpose of the WEF. Is it more than just a talk shop? A very good morning to you, Ayabonga, and thanks for allowing us to cross to you this very busy day that you're probably having in Cape Town. And I want to know, before we speak about the purpose of the World Economic Forum, just the atmosphere and what it's like there this morning. We saw the president this morning almost having to reprimand South Africans for the xenophobic attacks and the gender-based violence that we're seeing. And we know that just outside that venue, there's a couple of people who have said that they will protest against gender-based violence. So what's the atmosphere like there this morning, Ayabong?
Good morning to you and morning to the viewers here at Newsroom Africa Channel 405. You are indeed correct that we have heard murmurs of some form of demonstration outside of the venue, but I can say that inside here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre, that really a lot of that is something that you wouldn't see. All of the people here waiting in anticipation for some of the sessions to start. And earlier on this morning, as you said, President Cyril Ramaphosa at that Brand SA breakfast, speaking with a very, I guess, harsh and a firm tone on some of the issues that have happened outside of the World Economic Forum and on the sidelines of it. And I guess only time will tell whether or not some of those things that are happening here are going to have any material bearing on some of the deliberations and the discussions here at this World Economic Forum.
And I mean, Aya, let's speak about the World Economic Forum. I mean, it's the 28th one. What is its purpose? What purpose does it serve, especially, it being on the African continent?
So I guess the World Economic Forum on Africa is certainly a space not only for dialogue, reflection, but also a convening of some of the people who have influence and who marshal significant resources to try and deal with some of the structural changes that have happened in many of the economies, least of all here on the African continent. The theme of this year's conversation is around inequality, and that's certainly something that, as South Africans, we need little introduction to as one of the most unequal, if not the most unequal societies in the world. But moreover, I think the structural transformations that are happening around the fourth industrial revolution and how economies on the African continent can be able to, I guess, future-proof their own industrial patterns and their production patterns. And much of this conversation is going to be about that. I'm joined now by the Head of Communications at the World Economic Forum, Oliver Cann, who joins me now. Oliver, good morning to you and welcome to Newsroom Africa.
Thank you.
Oliver, just briefly, we do know that this is not the first convening of its kind. In 2017, we were in Durban having a similar kind of platform. And many people might be asking themselves here, what were some of the resolutions and outcomes of that particular convening that would have influenced, I guess, how you've set up this particular space? And more importantly, how are those resolutions going to feed into the conversations?
Well, you're absolutely right. So, in fact, this is our 28th meeting of the World Economic Forum in Africa. We started in 1990. 2 years ago, we were in Durban, as you say, and the theme again was around inclusiveness. This is a regular theme. We've been knowing and warning as a global institution for well over a decade that things are not going right when it comes to globalization. Too many losers, not enough winners, too much disparity of wealth within regions, within countries, within communities. How do we fix that? So that is an ongoing trend. You talk about what happened specifically in 2017. Look, we all want things to move faster, but there have been very significant progress areas. We see across the continent, I see a great deal of readiness in this vast region when it comes to preparedness for the fourth industrial revolution. So that was a big wake-up call for us as an institution around 2015 when we saw the way the world was changing, not just work in terms of robots taking over factory floors and computers displacing work, white-collar jobs in offices and shops, but also in the way we live and the kind of the compromise we have to make regarding data, for example. So progress there. I'm very, very happy to be able to say that South Africa this year became the first country in Africa to sign up to set up a center for the fourth industrial revolution here in Africa, not concerned about how to drive particular technologies, but how to actually shape those technologies development. What are the rules that we need to develop if we're going to protect people's data and privacy, make sure that AI doesn't leave anybody behind or create hidden biases? How do we make drones work? And this is an area, again, where I see lots of leadership from Africa, not just leapfrogging, but genuine world leadership. We worked with the government of Rwanda to create the world's very first civil guidelines for drone services. Now, as a result, Africa in Rwanda, we're seeing drones deliver supplies all over the country. Now, I read an amazing statistic around that the vast majority of people in Africa live more than 2 kilometers away from a paved road. So if you think about the opportunities here for a real kind of growth industry, that's a good example. FinTech. I remember when I first started as a journalist well over 15 years ago, looking into African technology. I remember reading about M-Pesa and being really pleased and excited that indigenous innovation is occurring. But now we don't need to talk about M-Pesa. We have our own unicorn. We have vibrant startups all over the continent. So I was very happy to read that year-on-year investment in startups in Africa is up over 100%. So when it comes to smart investors, whether it's at the venture side or whether it's at the good corporate scale, Africa is one of the most exciting regions right now.
Well, I guess a big chunk of this conversation today is going to be about how do we leverage the growth that comes from some of these structural changes and make it more inclusive. You spoke about rules just shortly, and I'm quite interested in this as a deliberative platform. Is it a space to, I guess, share some of the emerging knowledge around how we can protect the downside of some of these technologies? And if so, how does that translate into government policy?
Well, that's a very good point. So what do we do at these meetings? We're not about investment, right? So deals don't tend to get signed here. Networking gets done and the ground gets laid for investment. And what we're about is creating the society, the stability and the rules by which society can be strong and stable and therefore attract investment. So what do we know about the fourth industrial revolution? We know that automation is happening. We know that the rise of big data creates massive problems in terms of getting the balance right between innovation and privacy and human rights, basically. We know that there are areas such as drone technology and the Internet of Things which could really transform our working life, and it's how to govern them. When it comes to inclusiveness, then we're seeing businesses I think, wake up to this, and it's taking a long time. We as an organisation in 1973 published the Davos Manifesto, which was all about the stakeholder theory, involving everybody in deliberations. 2 weeks ago, the United States Business Roundtable came out with a very, very similar statement that they believe working solely and serving solely the shareholder was not the right way to go about it. So it's taken a long time to get there. Governments can also do their bit. What are the ways they can do that? They can encourage productive investments, cut down on rent seeking and unproductive investments, cut down on corruption. We're very, very happy to see great progress being made here. Fundamentally, education is key. We, as an institution, feel that reskilling is as fundamentally important as education for the next few years. Whilst we're seeing this transition, which we're moving into, we really need to see. We know that Africa's development will not take the course of the Asian tigers. We will know that manufacturing has a place, but it will not be the huge employment driver that it has been for other regions of the world. We see too much industrialization done by automation and by robots these days. So we also know there's a global skills gap for the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution. It sounds very simple, matching up the demand for jobs and the demand for skills, but that's actually very, very complicated. What are the partnerships to do that? Government can't afford to pay for it itself. Business won't pay for it unless it's incentivized to do so. So getting those partnerships in place, that's just an idea of a kind of complex discussions that we hope we will take forward, and we hope will lead to very, very concrete actions for Africa.
Speaking about governments, we heard over the last 24 hours or so the governments of Rwanda, Malawi and DRC pulling out from this event. As the organizers of this event, Oliver, just can you give us a sense of what the deliberations have been with some of those delegations from those African nations, and more importantly, what bearing is that going to have on the conversations here, and of course the impact that they can potentially have on the continent?
Well, what I can say is that we were informed on Saturday that President Paul Kagame would not be able to join us, so that's the 31st of August. I don't have any reasons for that. I can't give any reasons. I'm not privy to that kind of information. Malawi, we heard last week that the President would not be able to join us. The Democratic Republic of Congo, we've not heard either way, so they could turn up as a delegation, they maybe not. We assume not because we've not heard from them. On the other side, we have, I can confirm that travel plans and arrangements for all the other heads of state that we announced are still in place, and we expect them to take part in the deliberations. Okay. So as for reasons, it's pretty complex being a head of state, and things move around. And every meeting we have all around the world, every year, we see those last minute changes.
Okay. And then, we know we're wrapping up proceedings on Friday. And I guess with the program and how it's been set up in some of the sessions here, what are some of your anticipations by way of resolutions and outcomes that are going to come from this particular platform at the end of proceedings on Friday?
Well, there's a few areas. I'll quickly kind of glance over them. I'm really keen on entrepreneurship. Yeah, we've already talked about the fact that the growth is going to have to come from startup businesses and Africa's energetic, youthful population is a great asset, the endowment of human capital here. Africans start up more businesses than the global average, and yet more businesses in Africa fail than the global average. So there's a mismatch there. We're launching a platform which is putting together governments that are keen to kind of make those structural adjustments to policy to just help these companies get off the ground, and we're matching them up with investors. One of the problems for startups is not getting startup funding, it's getting second stage and later stage funding. So, how do we organize a better kind of communication from the entrepreneurs, the big corporations, the foundations, the venture capitalists, the banks that are providing debt financing. So that's one of the areas I'm really excited about. Big push on e-commerce. Again, it's these areas where we think Africa can be a real leader. Fintech is a really exciting area. Remittances, Africa's a world leader. Drone technology. We believe e-commerce can create 3 million jobs in the next 4 or 5 years. We have an action agenda to try to bring people forward for that. And again, on the risk and resilience side, we want to help involve the private sector in assisting countries where there needs to be better resilience and better planning to mitigate climate disasters, health disasters, and other kinds of impacts that could lead to fragility. So again, kind of getting a much more multi-stakeholder collaboration involved in strengthening states and building societies.
Oliver, thank you so much for your time. Wish you all the best for the sessions over the next few days or so, and I hope to catch up with you back when you're back in Johannesburg.